Hey Tube, we are at Big Dogs Main Jambo in Gore, Virginia. This is the lineup here, and I'll talk about Big Dogs shortly, but I wanted to just let you see. So you can see 1, 2, 3 on the left, and then there's a 4 there, and then you can see the numbers going to the right, and then there's a food shack right there, and registration. So basically this is the start of the Big Dogs event, and this is on the Friday, which is the low day for Big Dogs. One of the low days. So like Friday is kind of like semi-low. This is low for them. Saturday is like crazy, and then Sunday is not a lot of people. And yeah, isn't that cool? In front of us, if you didn't notice, there is a CJ3. I think it's like a 1947 that will be in front of us for the entire first day mostly. So anyway, so this is Gore, Virginia that we're at. Where is Gore, Virginia? First off, Gore, Virginia is right around Winchester or Leesburg if you're from the Northern Virginia area. It is kind of like between West Virginia, and Maryland, where like those states would kind of meet, if you imagined like that little edge region. It is probably an hour plus outside of Washington, D.C., maybe 2 hours from Washington, D.C. It depends on where you live in Northern Virginia to really how far Gore is from you. It could be pretty close if you live in the outskirts. And we are driving around, I think this is technically still the campground, believe it or not. They have this humongous campground, and when I say it's humongous, it is very far apart. It is almost entirely primitive camping. There is a small area, which is the area that we're camping in, that has electricity. They do have a dump station, they do have water, so it is not like all primitive camping, but you know, lots and lots and lots of the camping sections are just kind of like fields with fire pits and stuff. Very similar to Rock Run, Pennsylvania. We did this series on Rock Run. This will probably be a pretty lengthy series of videos. I do not know how many of them we're going to publish, but there'll be a lot of them. And yeah, there's a house there. There's one house, I think, that I'm aware of. And I think that's the owner's house of Gore. And the reason why I say I don't know how many is because I haven't cut them yet. But there's 3 days worth of footage, and normally a day's worth of footage turns into like 6 or 7 videos. So I mean, I could easily have a couple months worth of Big Dogs videos, believe it or not. We have so much video footage. And like I said, this is just basically the start of the main Jambo. We are in one of the lowest groups that they offer. The grouping of Jeeps at Big Dogs is very non-proportional to normal like off-road events. So at normal off-road events, typically 80% of the people are doing greens, or they're doing like easy beginner trails, and typically a very small sliver of people are doing difficult trails. I mean, they all feel difficult for everybody is what I'm but technically like the blacks or like the 7s or the 8s or whatever, typically there's a very, very small slice of people that are doing things where they want to break their Jeep. And then there's more people that are kind of like in the middle than that little slice of people that are doing like crazy stuff. But the large proportion is typically people doing like easier trails, like say flagpole knob style trails, or things that are like kind of like what you're looking at now, pretty lackadaisical. They're more aggressive than this. This is obviously a gravel road that we're on. But at Big Dogs, it's the exact opposite. I don't know if you noticed that. They had one lineup for 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3 is a green color. It's like what flagpole knob would be equivalent to, and there's nobody in the line on Friday. And then on Saturday, there were 2 vehicles in that line. So they had 2 people doing doing like the greens, and then everybody else was doing like the harder stuff. And they had multiple lineups of buggies. Like, it was ridiculous, like how many people they have doing like just the harder stuff. So this is I would say that this trail system is really designed for the people that want to do more of the intense stuff than the people that want to do like the super easy stuff. They do have some super easy stuff. If you have a brand new stock Jeep and you want to bring it out here, bring it out here. I'm not saying they do not have it, but I'm just saying that like this event is a little bit different than what you would see if you compared it to say like a Jeep Jamboree, or you know, we could name off like pretty much almost any event. You can go look at the registration and see who is signing up for what level, and this The registration of who signed up for what here is like kind of the reverse of the normal event that I've been to. It is a very fun event, and this is like connector trails right now that you're getting to see. We will get to some trails, some actual trails, but I just thought that, you know, a lot of people don't see Gore, and I would maybe, you know, play the video in real time so you can actually see a little bit more of this park. Now, this is not your typical off-road park. The typical off-road park, you can just like drive over to it and then, you know, hand them some cash, whatever, and get a sticker or something, or an armband, and then you can take your Jeep out. That's not how this place works. From my understanding, and I may not even get this correct, and if I do get it incorrect, please just mention it in the comments, like, or whatever, point it out to me. This place is basically a campground. Gore, Virginia, or the Cove campground. You can come here, you can camp. I'll do a camping video on it for you guys, where you can do like fishing and like play in the lake, and they have a beach, and they have all the stuff that like a campground would normally have. So they have a full-on campground. They do camping all the time, camping. Then next to the campground is some private property, and that private property is what we are on right now, which is the Big Dogs area. The private property, from my understanding, is only available for guided events, and those events are typically called Big Dog events, and the Big Dog events occur roughly like once a month, once every other month. You can go to their website and get a schedule. I think they hold like 6 or 7 events a year, and normally it's Big Dogs, and then it has some cool name after it. Like, this is the Big Dogs Main Jambo, but they also have like Big Dogs Icebreaker, which I think is like the first one, and then, like, you know, they kind of mix it up with the names that they throw at the end of it. So anyway, you go, you pick the Big Dogs event that you want to go to, and then you register for it, and you pay them some money or whatever, and then you can basically come out here guided. So like I said, this is not like your typical thing that you see with off-road parks, where normally you can just like show up and do whatever you want. This is all guided. As far as I know, the loosest they get with this is, I've heard that there are some Jeep clubs that can come out here independently without doing the Big Dogs, that can come out here as a group. I don't really know how that gets organized. I actually participated in one of those a couple years ago. There's some footage on our channel with the white Jeep of us being out here with Nova Jeepers. I didn't mention in the videos who we were with, but we were with Nova Jeepers at the time, and they had some kind of arrangement that they had already in place where they could come out twice a year and bring 10 Jeeps, and I have no idea how they got arrangement, but that was their arrangement. And back in the day, in other videos, we did a lot harder content. We did Quorum, for instance. We did V Trail or V Notch, whatever you want to call it, and then some other trails that I do not know the name of. But now that I've looked at a map, I think one of them might have been Kentucky, which is a trail next to Quorum. And this right here would be an example of one of the easier trails at Gore. Now, that thing I just went over was a basketball-size obstacle, and like I've described in other videos, typically if you have basketball-size obstacles, typically I consider it a blue if you have to drive over them. Most of the obstacles you can see here are closer to softball size, and so the group that we signed up for, or whatever that we got in line with, was the 4 group, if you're wondering. And the difficulties, 1, 2, 3 is like easy, beginner, and then 4, 5, 6 is blue or medium. And that's a respectable level, I think, for a Jeep. Honestly, like 4, 5, 6, and then 7, 8, 9 is like the lines up typically with black, and that's like typically you will damage your vehicle unless like you are very highly modified. And then 10 is typically red. However, there's a disparity between the parks, and not all the parks. The colors like don't always match up. Like, so for instance, typically a Roush, what they call red on most of their reds, is more like a 7, 8, 9, even though people see the word red. And I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer on their park. They have an awesome park. I love their park. It's just the colors don't usually like 100% match up. But Crucible, for instance, is a red there, and that is definitely like probably like a 9 or 10. So not all the trails that go to the park, you know, are kind of oddly numbered. I would say that at this park, it feels like the vast majority of the park is probably at least a 4 or 5, and they kind of struggle with trying with being able to find like easy content. So we were in the 4 group, like I was saying, and hopefully the camera perspective is okay. I changed the camera perspective around today. And anyway, so typically what we were doing is it seemed like we were doing more like 5s and 6s, even though we were in a 4 group, but we were going over bypasses to kind of skip over like the more difficult obstacles. And so by doing so, that like kind of like lowered the difficulty of the trail. It wasn't like they had like a whole 1,000,004 rated trails. It was more like they have a whole lot of like 5, 6, 7 rated trails, and then they have a whole lot of bypasses. So then, you know, you can essentially hit the same trail but have it at different difficulty levels by being able to take different levels of bypasses and such. So the camera position is a lot different than normal. We are actually shooting the video in 360 degree, even though this video came out in 1080p. I reframed it because most people don't really feel like, you know, using the mouse to pan the camera around or whatever. And normally we have the camera mounted inside the vehicle, like on the dash, and normally there's dash footage. However, today, for whatever reason, I had decided instead to mount the camera on the outside of the vehicle on the glass, so it's actually like above the glass, like at the very top. Right now, it's in the left-hand corner, so I can reach it. But you'll see later on in the video, I actually move it, or in one of the videos, you're going to see the camera position move, and I decided to move it to the center of the glass, so then you don't have that kind of wavy looking CB radio antenna in front of me so much. So you are actually watching this video in real time. I don't usually play videos in real time. Normally we play the videos in like 4x speed or something extremely faster, but I decided to just start this one out in real time so you can kind of get a really good feel for, you know, what it's like to be out here. So one of the questions that I guess sometimes comes up is, where's a roll bar on that CJ? And believe it or not, they don't have a roll bar. Back in the day, when you got them from the factory, they didn't have roll bars. So obviously they have to be very, very careful, because, you know, they could obviously have a pretty big accident if they don't have a roll bar on the vehicle. But that is part of the kind of the fun of driving an old vehicle. You know, like it's not the same as a new vehicle. It doesn't have power steering, and it doesn't have a roll bar, and it doesn't have air conditioning, it doesn't have heated seats. I don't even know if it actually has a radio, but I mean that's the thing. And you're gonna get to see. I mean, like, you get to see the Gladiator, you know, from 2020, and then the CJ from the 40s. You know, that's a pretty big gap of time. You're looking at like 50 plus years probably in improvements and changes in Jeep between us and them. So you can see here, like, the placement of the camera. Like I was saying, it's up here on the glass, right above the Freedom top. The card that you see in the window is a card from the campground. So when you check in, they give you that card and they ask you to keep it in your vehicle, so then they know that you're paid up and you're like a camper here, and you're welcome. And I guess if you don't have the card, then they know that you probably don't belong here, you've paid or something, or you lost the card. Like, I don't know. So you can see here, there's a very large obstacle that we're not going to go over, but you can see the obstacles are starting to grow in size, and like the obstacle on the left is probably larger than a beach ball, even though we did not go over it, and then like significantly larger than a beach ball, and then the one on the ground closer to it is more like a beach ball probably. And then most of these rocks that we're getting ready to go over and such. Like the one that the passenger driver tire just is on right now is at least the size of a basketball, if not larger. So this definitely would be like a blue trail because we are forced to go over obstacles that are like basketball size. And this is always like the challenge with a Gladiator, which is getting the rear tires lined up. That's why you can see me backing up. And like I said in other videos, you steer from the rear. So you always like line yourself up in such a way that you can get the rear tires, the track to where you need to be. And since the rear tires don't turn, only the front tires turn, it means that a lot of times you're doing like these 3-point backups to get them lined up, like when you're in a really substantially large vehicle. Now that CJ, that's narrow track, they just like flew right between those trees like no problem whatsoever. But for us, it's a little bit more challenging to fit the vehicle between these trees. Now, part of the reason why we bought the Gladiator versus the white JK that we had that was up on 40s is this stuff felt like it was getting way too easy, and like, it kind of wasn't really fun anymore, to tell you the truth, because we were just plowing over everything. I mean, we could just be driving around malls. I mean, it was so easy. Now you can see me doing that little 3-point there. Basically, I'm not liking probably like the positioning of the rear tires. So it's almost always steer from the rear. That's Mike there on our left. Mike was the guide for 2 of the days, and then we went with a different group on the Sunday because they're going to go do some like crazy stuff. And Mike, fantastic guy, and he was there to through the thick and thin. I mean, he was so good. I mean, at one point we needed like a high lift jack, and he went all the way up to his Jeep that was like, it felt like half a mile away, and got his jack and carried it all the way back. I mean, he was so helpful. Another time I got pinned, and he like drove the whole trail and came back around and winched us off. So anyway, we're gonna cut the video, I guess, pretty close to here, and then we'll, because this is a pretty long video for us, and the next video will be more of Gore. So I'll try to get some links up in the corner for you guys to show where we're at. I don't know the name of any of these trails, and they don't really publish that many maps, but I do have a map of this place. And please, like always, like and subscribe. Subscribers really help. We are pushing to try to get to 1,000 subs. So thank you, and we'll see you guys around.